All right, recording. So the topic of today, which I don't really know what this is going to be about yet, but the word is desire. And, I spent a little bit of time trying to kind of think about, well, what in the world does that actually mean? What is desire? I have to get rid of my whole face here. Uh, okay, I did it. What, what is what does that even mean? What does desire actually mean? What does it mean to me? And I was thinking about how there's a couple of words that, especially when I relate them to myself, they feel kind of intense. Um, and I associate them really with other people. And also sometimes with negativity, even though that they're not necessarily negative, but part of my part of my cultural upbringing, my religious upbringing, I think gave me some sort of a confusing association or a confusing relationship at times with words, certain words in particular. Desire is an interesting one because it can mean so many different things. It has a lot of different sort of nuances in general, but I mean, it could be what is it that we're desiring for? And one of the ways in which we use the term desire, I think a lot is around sexuality and sensuality. Maybe it's kind of been a little bit too emphasis there. I think that's incredibly important to talk about, especially as women, because sometimes I think that we focus a lot on being desired, but we're not really sure what we actually desire. And I think the difference is, you know, we're given permission to be desired. That seems like what's coming at us all of the time. But that's sort of even maybe the purpose for a lot of us. We're taught whatever we do is fine, but we also need to be desired. It's weird, right? It's weird. I don't know why being desirable, especially physically, seems to be such a big deal for women. They're in particular, just the amount of emphasis that's placed on it. So I notice it a lot in reality TV. I'm I'm usually kind of fascinated by these shows because I really like the relationship or the interrelational qualities that people display in those things, especially on these dating shows and stuff. But one of the things that I've noticed is that the people are hyper, hyper, hyper attractive. I mean, hyper attractive, and definitely have a lot of emphasis on physical appearance. I'm always kind of interested in that, particularly when I there may be people that look like that. Obviously, they're on TV, but I don't think it's super common. So you got a bunch of people who are physical outliers. And I think that they typically are really active on social media, which is how they're cast for these things or how they're found for these things. So it's kind of weird because it's a very strange sort of sample of people. I wouldn't say it's in any way representative of some type of mainstream, but we watch it because all of us are interested in watching pretty people. What's fascinating to me, though, is how quickly the physical attributes, which are what have been emphasized a lot culturally and in media and in print and in, well, I mean, sales of products, but just generally the physical attributes, they start to kind of quickly, depending on the show, they start to play a little bit of second fiddle to something else. And the idea is that desirability is very cranked up as an emphasis in these shows. Who is going to flirt with who is bringing something to the table. But in the beginning, it's this very surface thing. You don't really have a chance to get to know each other. You're just kind of basing things on appearance. And appearance is significant, not just because of what it means individually for the person who may be attractive, but what it means for you if this attractive person also finds you attractive and wants to be in relationship with you even briefly. There's something validating about that. In reality, though, and this is just the truth, and everybody who has ever been in a relationship for any length of time can attest to the fact that you definitely need some level of physical attraction. I think that that's important. But to say that that is enough to sustain any type of relationship is just inaccurate. I guess different people would have a different level of emphasis on the importance of that to them. But the truth of the matter is that like desire is a really, really different topic than the way that it's being presented to us. And I think it's problematic because one of the things you see really quickly on these dating shows, and it's frustrating, but it's just so true. Even if you are, let's just say, the most typically attractive person on the show, very quickly, it won't matter if you have no ability to engage, if there's no kindness, if there's no tenderness, if there's no vulnerability, if you're incapable of intimacy, if you are lying, if you are rude, if you are unkind, if you're all of these things. Like, it's just so crazy that like what we spend the majority of our time on, it's not really what matters. I mean, it really doesn't matter at all, especially in like the long-term viability of a relationship. In the short term, two pretty people together can get, I think, a lot more attention. But I have no idea what that means for the happiness of the relationship. I would say that we are the most interested long-term in happiness. Like an actual true happiness. I remember reading about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her husband, Martin, and they have the most incredible love story because of the level of support that they gave to each other, even though it did not fit any of the cultural norms of the time. And if you're unfamiliar with their story and who they are, it's absolutely worth reading about. But I remember reading about the level of care that they provided for each other, about the level of understanding that they had within their relationship, about who they each were individually and the best ways for both of them to be able to grow and shine, and what that meant for them. And here's this couple who lived their entire lives together, happily, for all intents and purposes, had both of them have huge careers, tons of different levels of public interest in them, and they weathered that and did it well. That is who we should freaking have a reality, dating show about. But we would never. I always think it's really funny how the couples who figure out how to stay together after like Love is Blind or something, where they met and they formed like a emotional connection in particular before they saw each other, the emotional connection has to be there. It won't override being unattracted to the person. It just won't, unfortunately. But it absolutely will override a portion of it. So maybe this isn't your particular type, if there's a type, but the desire that you're going to feel for this person is going to be a lot bigger. They still have to fit kind of in your realm of possibility, but they can be pretty far outside of maybe what your typical look is, as long as you've connected with them emotionally and that intimacy can remain. If you're turned off for whatever reason, I don't know what that means, but let's just say like you actually find them particularly unattractive right away, I don't know that you can overcome that. You definitely see that in the show, that emotional connection may not override some other thing, but a lot of the time it's a lot less important. I really have enjoyed watching the Love is Blind show. At times I can't watch the whole thing because it goes on for way too long, but what I find really fascinating is, yes, some people are literally just there for the exposure, and you can kind of tell right away. And people are not great at faking intimacy. Everybody feels it. Everybody feels it. Like, I don't know that I was ever shocked about who got married or who didn't. It wasn't surprising. Even if they tried to make it exciting or surprising, it just wasn't. You could tell moving up to all of it going on, like, how people kind of felt about each other. More importantly, though, you could tell how ready they actually were to get married to anybody, but just in general, which just meant that their ability to commit to any person was different, a different person to person. We all have a different level of willingness to commit. Some of us are a lot more afraid. But, I think about desire, and I think about what it means to be desired, and I think about what it is that I desire. And I realize I spent a lot of my life worrying about being desired. A whole lot more, I think, at times, and especially when I was younger, than I worried about what do I desire. It's the same word, but I looked at it as something that other people that I had no control over. I mean, I could manipulate parts of myself to try to be more desirable in ways that I thought would matter. But I'm always sort of perplexed by the most desirable thing that I see in people is actually them knowing what they desire, and in a bigger, broader way, not just what they find attractive, but like what they want to deeply engage with, what they want to know about, what they want to experience, what they want things to feel like around them, like a true deep desire for whatever it is. That is so compelling. That is so attractive. You hear a lot that confidence is like the most attractive feature in a person. I think that is sort of true. I think in some ways it is, because what we like is we like that. We all want to feel more confident. I think in a way, the reason that we like it so much is we're kind of hoping like we'll catch a little bit of it, like a little bit will rub off. Like if I get close to you and you're really confident, maybe I'll get a little bit more confident about myself. I don't know if it works that way, but maybe that's partly why we like it. But I think the other reason is that there's something about someone who presents as confident that they know what they want. They know what they desire. And if that intensity is put on you, that can feel incredibly good. If somebody really knows what they want and they've decided that that's me, that could feel really good. It could feel really good for a while. But what matters a whole lot more, actually, in the scheme of things, in the long term, is not how desirable this person finds me at all. How in touch am I with what I actually desire? In the dating world in particular, when I was in the dating world post-divorce, it's a whole interesting case study on people, everyone. I mean, I don't know. I had my experiences with it. But one of the things I recognized is that I was coming from a place where I wanted to be wanted. I was in pain. I'd felt rejected. I felt like a failure. I felt like I wasn't really sure. I didn't really want to be in this situation again. I didn't want to be a single person, post-divorce, trying to navigate the idea of a relationship. I didn't really want to be there, but I also kind of recognized that it's part of the healing process a little bit for me to re-embrace myself as just my own. Outside of a relationship with someone, outside of that. It was part of my process. I don't think everyone has to do it, but it was important for me. It was a bit of a reclaiming of, who am I all on my own, all by myself. But one of the things I found really interesting is, especially in the beginning of dating for me. So I would say like right out the gate in the first few people, I really only kind of worried about whether or not they liked me. I sort of only really was concerned about whether or not they found me desirable. Like that was kind of the metric. It took me a lot longer of getting to know somebody before I started to actually be able to form real opinions about what I thought about them. And if I felt rejected or not wanted enough or something like that, I would feel a lot of pain, even though I didn't really have much of an idea of whether or not I desired them. I desired being wanted. I desired being desirable. But it's not a great energy to start any type of relationship in. It's just not. Plus, nobody else has the ability to make us feel something that we're unwilling to feel about ourselves. You know, like somebody can tell us again and again and again and again the truth for them. But if we look in the mirror and we see something else entirely, we don't believe them. We just think they're being nice. We think they're just being kind. What do you want from me? Why are you just being nice to me? Oh, you just love me. That's why you're saying that. You know, I remember that I used to think when I was growing up and my mom would tell me that I looked beautiful or something, I would just be like, oh, you have to say that, you're my mom. Because I knew in my head, there's no way that that can possibly be true. I understood, you know, all of the ways in which I did not fit any type of stereotypical pretty girl metric. And it was very annoying to me if people would try to tell me anything different. It was just frustrating. Like, what are you doing? Like, I am aware of all of the ways in which I have been told, and I'm aware of all of the ways in which I am not that girl. And I have like a really beautiful mom and a really beautiful sister. And they're both, you know, very petite features, and they're just gorgeous and super photogenic. And so I think for me, it was like, no. I even see in my own household what a really pretty, really attractive girl looks like. You fit all of the everything that, and I knew that wasn't me, but I wasn't super down on myself either. I just understood the limitations. So if my mom would be like, you look, you know, gorgeous or something, I would kind of, okay, thanks. You know, I don't know why you think you need to lie to me. I remember thinking that was how it felt. Well, that had nothing to do with, she wasn't lying to me. I look at my children all the time. I'm absolutely convinced of their gorgeousness. I don't really care what anybody else thinks. I know who they are. When I see them, it isn't just some 2D version of a picture where you happen to have features that, you know, particularly look good caught on camera. I understand who they are. I see when they're radiating all kinds of amazing stuff. I'll see my daughter. She looks gorgeous all of the time. Sometimes she's trying to, sometimes she's just gorgeous. But she may not feel like she put in enough effort at times to get that title, and it'll just make me laugh because it's like, you know, of the people who tell us that we're beautiful, the most important ones should be the ones who actually know us and love us. Why the hell do we care what anyone else thinks? If you happen to be with people who love you and know you and think that you're wonderful and desirable and beautiful, you're doing really well, you know? But I feel like that's not exactly what it is that we are taught. So, or that we accept. And it's ridiculous. Like, I can tell you now, being in my mid 40s, that I've been around long enough that I've seen trends around body types that are popular change. Well, I'm sorry, but nobody can change their body type dramatically. I mean, most of us are born with something. I guess there's some ways in which you have a little bit of control, but not a ton. There's a lot that you have absolutely, you really have no control over. But depending on when you're born and when you happen to be a teenager or when you happen to be in your early 20s, if your particular body style matches what's popular, I guess maybe you have a little bit of an easier time. You don't have to manipulate yourself as much. I don't really know, but it's absolutely ridiculous when I think about it. And then I kind of wonder too, like, what is it that we don't do in our lives because of not feeling like we look the way that we are supposed to or should or want to? And it's, we don't get to the things that we desire. We don't get to the things that we really actually deeply desire to do because we worry way too much about what it is that we look like and then what other people think about what we look like. There was this exercise, and I don't remember who did it, but I loved it, where they just took like an ordinary person, and I see ordinary as a non-model, just not somebody who is professionally a model for work. And they would put them in, I don't know if they were like fully nude or close to nude or what the situation was, but they essentially just like took pictures of people like almost naked. And they were people who had expressed some type of like, oh, I know this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong, like all of us would do. These are the reasons I'm not a model. I'm not paid for how I look. But they put them up on a billboard, like I think individually, like one at a time. I mean, it was in New York, so it must have been like a digital billboard. But I remember that what they did is they had the person who had had their picture taken, or a couple of pictures of them taken, listen to what people on the street, so people who did not know them, I don't even know if they didn't see their faces. They just wanted to get like, what is someone's honest feedback after looking at this picture of this person who they don't know with like no clothing on them or like very minimal clothing on them. You know, it was amazing. Because I remember this, and I don't know if the people that set this up knew this would happen or like they had experience that it would happen, but it was crazy. People on the street I mean, like unanimously found tons of things that they thought were absolutely beautiful and gorgeous and desirable about every single one of those naked bodies, every single one of those people. And it was like universal. Oh, she's got like really beautiful waist or this super graceful neck, or I love the way her calf tapers, or I love that he has like such a broad back. Like what was so amazing was that universally the people on the street had this really positive association when they were asked about seeing this image, seeing this picture. And they all said really kind things, like really nice things. And they were true, but they didn't like zone in on like these particular imperfections. I just don't think that that's what people do. But I think we are conditioned to believe that it's how it's going to go. And maybe if, you know, maybe if it's totally random on the internet and you're not feeling good about yourself that day, maybe you'll say something crappy about someone else. I don't know. I don't know what people do. But I would say that we actually have a lot of generous assumptions of others for the most part. Some people might not. Some people have more things about them that are hurt, or more things about them that are, you know, not super feeling great. But the truth is, in my opinion, that we are worrying a lot about desirability, what other people think of us, a lot more than we're worrying about what it is that we actually desire. And this plays out in I think all parts of our lives. And it's definitely a big theme in mine when I think about it. How often have I traded time trying to be more desirable that I could have used actually pursuing what I desired? And I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot. And then I remember a time, and this was probably back in the beginning even of dating as a, you know, newly solo person. I actually don't think I knew what I desired. And a lot of people say, like, what do we like to do? Well, that's a form of desire, what I desire to do. And there was a period of time for me where things were so rough that I couldn't tell you. You know what I desired? I desired not feeling like in that moment that everything about my life was about to fall apart. What I would like to do today is not have to worry about that. But I didn't have anything else besides that. I didn't have any idea what I liked to do at that point. I know I did before in my life, but it took me a long time to kind of come up with like, you need to have things that you do that you know that you enjoy doing. What are they? And I had no idea. I remember sitting there one day and I was like, I'm going to write something down that I would want to do, but I couldn't come up with anything. I could come up with a lot of things I thought that I should do. I could come up with a lot of things that I thought like that other people might enjoy doing. So I could respond to someone's crises. I could respond to someone else's wants and needs, but I had no idea what mine were. Oh, one of my kids, if they desired to go do something, I would probably work hard to make that happen. But if it was me, and especially if I got any pushback or it was going to make someone cranky, like, not worth it. You know, the problem with that, though, and I know this now, although I didn't know it at the time, is I thought I was doing the right thing. I was a loving, caring, devoted mom. And I think most moms are. But I lost track of something important. I'm not just tasked with meeting all of the needs of my kids, I'm also tasked with teaching them how to meet their own needs. And one of the best ways that we teach is just by doing. I always say that kids don't really listen, they watch. I think that's mostly true. Do they listen a little bit? Sure. Do they watch a lot more? Mm-hmm. Right? Like they're going to do what you did. They're going to have relationships that look like your relationships. They're going to have a sense of self-esteem that's at least in some proximity to yours about yourself, right? Our younger people, whether they're our kids or they're our friends or they're just the next generation coming up, they need really incredible examples of people who are living and really know themselves and what it is that they desire and how it is that they can contribute and what is important to them. And it can be taken too far. I'm not suggesting, obviously, that you dive into the deep ends of like, I don't know, like utter self-involvement. But I think that those are outliers. Again, I don't think that that's the norm. I don't think that that's what's common. I mean, people, there's a lot of spectrums, but we spend a decent amount of time getting to know people who are not anyone we're ever going to meet. And we do that by reading about them or seeing what they're doing or what are they eating or what's their diet plan, or I don't know. Like I grew up in the 90s, and when I was growing up, the thing that mattered the most was just to be as like absolutely skinny as possible. You either kind of like fit that or you didn't. I think when like Cindy Crawford came along, you could maybe be like a little bit more like voluptuous, but I think it was like Kate Moss was kind of like the thing. I remember wishing I could be willowy. I remember that was like the term I had identified as like a very attractive, as like a tall, thin, willowy woman. And that was what I wanted to be. But I was definitely not that. I grew up dancing. I was a ballerina. I did gymnastics. I was a teeny, teeny, tiny, but never willowy. Strong, at times curvy, at times whatever. But the point was that I didn't feel like I fit this idealized version of what it was that should be. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But, I think about, there was a couple of things I picked up on when I was younger that people did that would bother me that I swore I would never do. So one of them was when we would go swimming, my mom was ashamed of how she looked. Her body issues were pretty apparent to me growing up with her. I never really understood why. My mom is absolutely beautiful. She's small, but she always thought she needed to be smaller. So there were times where she didn't want to wear a swimsuit, so she didn't want to go swimming with us. And I remember thinking at the time, just as a kid who just desperately wanted to play with my mom in the swimming pool because it was fun and I loved her and I thought she was absolutely beautiful. And it was hard for me that she couldn't see herself that way. It was frustrating, It's like, what is she talking about? She's absolutely gorgeous. And I remember saying to myself, okay, no matter what, for the rest of my life, I'm never going to not play in the water or swim because I don't like how I look in a bathing suit. I'm not going to do it. I'll find a bathing suit that I like, or I'll just get the frick over it. I said frick. That's kind of funny. I will get over it, but I'm getting in the water. I'm not going to not live my life, enjoy things, because I really love being in the water. I'm not going to take myself out of the enjoyment of things because of that. And I will tell you that most of the time, especially when I was younger, I really didn't really have any moments where that was like too hard. Not because I thought I looked great, just because I was willing to play and participate and jump in the water anyway. And then there was this time, and I want to say this happened like the last couple of years. So I gained a lot of weight for me, for my frame, and it happened pretty fast. It definitely, there was several things involved. The most significant thing for me is that I'm really affected if my liver is unhappy for any reason, and I have a very sensitive liver. I've inherited it. But if my liver is in any way unhappy, I am prone to like pretty rapid weight gain. And the pandemic and the sitting at home, it changed my activity level pretty drastically. We also ate, I would say, not as healthy. We were afraid more. There was a lot going on, the kids and I. So we definitely were cooking less and eating like junkier food, which wasn't necessarily the norm for me moving, before that. And I also think that there were times where I was drinking wine more regularly. I think I kind of am very off and on. Like I don't really drink at all because again, I have a sensitive liver and my body doesn't like it. I get like actually now I actually break out in hives, so I think I have kind of an allergy. But regardless, I just for the first time, maybe the second time, but I really think that there was like some emotional eating that kicked in. My liver was already kind of not super happy. I was definitely very stressed during all of that period of time. I didn't stay home. My job was considered essential provider status. So I continued to work, which I'm grateful for, but was also extremely hard. It was really hard to be out when nobody else was out. So I'm in the greater Seattle, Washington area, and I would be the only person on the road driving around, going to people's houses, being really, concerned all of the time. I was very afraid that I was going to get someone else sick. I wasn't sick, but I was like, people who were elderly would have me out to their houses to look at projects. And I spent a lot of time just being really afraid. I was very conscientious about, what I did and where I went. But anyway, it was hard. It was a lot to manage the political ideology within my own company and the greater area. Like it got really hard. People definitely, had really different ideas. There's so much discord. I mean, there was also an election at the time. So I don't know, it's just hard. And for some reason, for me, I just gained a lot of weight. So when I was at my heaviest, I was down in Newport Beach, California, and my stepson lives down there, and he and his wife had just had a baby. And I was so excited to get to be down there to meet the baby. But one of the days, and I put a swimsuit on, but one of the days they wanted to all jump in the ocean, like my stepson and my kids. And I had this moment sitting there where I didn't really want to take my little dress thing off to run into the ocean. I felt that big feeling of shame wash over me. Cause I'm down in like Newport Beach, California, where I think everybody just like lives on like alfalfa sprouts or something. So they're all like really teeny tiny. And not to knock anyone that lives down there, I'm sure. Anyway, but I had that moment, where I was like, hey, are you going to do the thing that you promised from a very young age that you're going to do, which was to never miss out on an opportunity to run into the water and play with your kids just because you have to put a swimsuit on to do it? So I was like, all right. So I got up and I freaking whipped that dress off and I ran into the ocean and I had a great time. I swam around. The water was kind of cold. We played. We had fun. We body surfed for a bit. And here's the thing. I have no idea what anyone thought about how I looked, but honestly, probably nobody cared, which is 98% of the time. Nobody cares. Secondly, if they did, then that says a lot more about them than me. And also, I'm not doing that thing anymore where I'm going to miss out on life and on activities I desire to do and things that matter to me because I'm worried that I won't be acceptable physically to some question mark. And I still wasn't really nice to myself. I still kind of coded and felt shame that I should be different than I was. And that isn't super, super easy to admit because I think that I really tend to be somebody who has worked really hard at loving myself, even when what I saw in the mirror didn't match what I thought I should see when I look in the mirror. And it's vulnerable to talk about because there is a lot of weird shame for women with our bodies that isn't about the size or the shape. It's just there. It's just there. And the only thing that I should care about when it comes to my body is if it is a healthy body, if it does what I want it to do, and if I feel good. I mean, that's really it. It's not anyone else's business. And, I'm the only one that knows. But you want to know it's weird, speaking of this, similar to not having any idea what I desired at one point, or what I wanted to do, or what I cared about, or what I thought was important. I also had no real sensation in my body that I was paying attention to. I was very cut off from it for a very, very long time. I actually know now that I was 5 when I first disassociated from my body, and it did not really come back online until about 5 years ago. So most of my life, if you'd asked me how I felt, I would tell you emotionally how I felt. I didn't know sensation-wise how my physical body felt. Like if I got really sore, I could probably code that like I have a really sore muscle because it hurts when I'm moving. But I wouldn't necessarily have recognized when I was doing the activity that caused me to be sore. Or like I would get these bruises, but I had no idea where the bruise came from. So clearly I knocked into something hard enough to cause a bruise, but I didn't even register it at the time. I was just oblivious to it. I really didn't have much of a sense of like my organs and my muscles and my bones and my spine and whether anything felt good or didn't feel good, or sensations that were positive or sensations that are negative. I didn't have very much of it. I would have to get really big to override the numbness and get my attention. And that is such a problem, right? That's such a problem because I think about the way that I want to be in the world and the way that I want to make decisions and the way that I want to feel and be connected. But I was making it really, really hard because what I know now, a lot of my ability to get answers from myself about big questions in life. What should I do? What should I not do? Is this the right path? Is this the right path? Should I, yes or no? I always call it my yes or no is actually a bodily sensation for me. It's a very specific bodily sensation. There's a bodily sensation and there's an absence of the bodily sensation. I didn't have the ability to feel that. So for a very, very, very long time, I made decisions almost entirely intellectually. I wasn't able to use any of the wisdom from my heart, from my gut, from my body. It just wasn't loud enough. And I think that when I look back at how long it took me at times to really like come to a place of agreement with my mind and my mind, it's because I was ignoring like 75% of the information that was like trying to get itself to me. My whole body, I understand it now. It is very communicative, but if you have disassociated from it for whatever reason, and I had a good reason to, most of us do have a good reason to disassociate from our bodies at one time or another, but I didn't know how to trust it. I didn't know how to listen to it. I didn't even know how to feel it. I remember taking this yoga class. And I always tried to take yoga, but I didn't like it. I felt competitive with myself. I felt frustrated with myself. I felt like I should be able to do it better. I should be more flexible. I should be stronger. I kind of just hated it. I just didn't like it. I never, ever lost track of time and space while doing yoga. I just felt every single second and minute, and it was kind of miserable. And I was just glad when I was done. And I would feel good that it was done. Like, well, it was better than, I don't know. I don't know what it was better than, but I didn't like it until I found this particular style of yoga called yin yoga. And I was a lot younger when I found it. It was in a college class at my local community college. And what was really interesting about it is it's very different because it's primarily really, really, really long held stretches. Well, so for me, the reason that this was so beneficial is that I couldn't lie to myself about how flexible I was, because you can't hold anything for 5 minutes if you've pushed yourself too hard into it. There's just way too much pain. You have to back off, back off, back off. So you have to listen to your body. You have to feel sensations because you simply have to in order to be able to do anything for 5 minutes. So that was really good. The second thing is that the more time I spent in one pose, the more I could feel these little bits of my body and understand these different sensations. Like if I move a little bit, oh, that's so intense. That tendon or that muscle doesn't want to stretch that much. I have to pull back a little bit. Okay, but now it's been like 2 minutes. Like, do I still have that resistance there, or has it let go? So I'm going to test it. Oh, it's mostly gone. Okay, wow, look, I just got a little bit more flexible. So there was this like little bit of communication that had to happen in order to be able to do this for so long. And it was just me and my body talking to each other, because if you're holding a pose for 5 or 6 minutes, what anyone else is doing doesn't matter. You look around at everyone all you want, but it's you and your screaming muscles that you have to pay attention to. And because we stayed there for so long, it forced me into a place to start to pay attention. So it was really, really, really beneficial for me. I had a ton of tension I was holding in my body that I wasn't even noticing. I was just walking around in a lot of pain day to day, but unaware of it. So I kind of let that practice go for a while, but it came up again recently. I'm doing it more now because, again, it isn't something that if you fix it, it's fixed forever. It takes a while. I had way more of my life disassociated from my body than I had, really connected to it and feeling it more consistently. So I don't know how I injured myself, but something got injured, and I started to have like a lot of pain in different areas. It's like in my mid back on one side, on the same side, that knee, and then my neck. And one day I realized that it had been a couple of weeks I couldn't turn my neck really like at all. Like it just wouldn't go. And I realized it was really bad when I was like trying to look behind myself. And I hadn't noticed it because I have a backup camera. So some of the times I wasn't craning my neck as hard. But all of a sudden I realized like, oh my gosh, I can barely move. It's been going on for a while, but that's a reminder again that you're not really paying attention to the sensation of your body if you can barely move and you're surprised by it. So I ended up going to a chiropractor, and what they ultimately found out was that I'd had this injury from snowboarding where I fell, and it hurt at the time. Like I don't know if I just bruised my tailbone or something, but I mean, like, it was this flash of searing pain that wouldn't go away. And I remember it, but then I just, I felt better after a few weeks, and then I let it go. Well, what I hadn't known happened was that when that injury occurred, my hip had like my whole leg, like my whole hip had like jammed up into my hip socket, which is something that your body will do to protect things. Like it'll kind of grab onto it. So it's in this like super, 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 super tight state, trying to protect you, trying to probably protect the bone, protect the ligament, protect something, but it was protective. Well, anyway, I was stuck up there and I had no idea. Well, because it was stuck up there, it was making like that leg 1.5 to 2 inches shorter than the other. So over time, structurally, my knee was hurting and my back was hurting and my neck was hurting. And it had nothing to do with my neck or my back or my knee. It was that my hip was screwed up. I never felt any pain in the hip at all. Nothing. Never could have said there's something wrong with my hip because I had no pain in my hip. Like of all the things that hurt, it wasn't one of them. So he kind of like yanks my leg back out. He had to do it a couple of times. All of a sudden, I felt a lot of pain in my hip. And I went, whoa, where has that been the whole time? That was the problem. I didn't even feel it. It was so jammed up in there. Started to hurt after that. And actually, everything else got better pretty quickly. I went and saw him a couple of different times. But one of the things he said to me, and it just still makes me laugh because it's so true, is he was like, I can adjust your back and that's all good and fine. He was like, but until you deal with the fact that your muscles are seized up in your back and your neck from your stress that you're carrying, he was like, you're just going to keep pulling yourself out of whack. roll my shoulders while I'm talking. It's just, again, another reminder that we are holding on to so much all of the time, but it is effort. It takes intention. It takes practice. It takes, honestly, probably even some skill to really get good with all of this. And I do have a thing that I do that I think is actually super helpful, because I do really, really love my body. I do really, really love myself. It doesn't keep me from feeling flashes of criticism if I like walk by the mirror, or if I see myself on camera, or if I see a picture of myself. Like, I can still feel that no matter what, that big, mean voice that's in there. It's hard to override, but it takes work. And I think that it is getting better. One of the things I recognize now is, even if the image that I see is challenging for me and I don't like it, I have another thing I can do. And it's this exercise that's, how good can I feel in my body? And it's very similar to like a yoga nidra practice, where you're just starting to notice all of these different parts of your body. But for me, is that I realize that there's certain movements that I can make that feel incredibly good. So I'll kind of like go through my whole body, like trying to find stuff that feels really good. And I find, for me in particular, if I get to my hips and I do this in a way where nobody's watching, because I don't want to look, ridiculous, whatever. But if I really, really like move my hips, like not in a way that anybody else would find desirable, but in a way that feels amazing to me, that I desire, I can integrate my love for myself out of my head and actually land it more in my body. Imagine it. Okay. I can find the love. I can find the love because of the movement. Again, unobserved, just noticing, just kind of playing around. It's really good to be unobserved. It's really, really nice to try to like play with sensations and try to play with how things feel if there isn't anyone watching. Because how you dance, if you think someone's watching, can be different than how you dance or how you move. It doesn't have to be a dance, but how you move if you're completely unobserved. You can just get deeper into it. And if you find that huge piece of resistance where you immediately go into your mind and you think about how it might look while you're doing it, that's okay. That's totally okay. That means you're a beginner. It's okay. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. You're going to get better at it. Don't immediately, oh, no, that's not available to me because I got right back at my head. Okay, so what? Try again. Try again the next day. Try a different piece of music. Try different clothes. Try a different room. Lock the door. Do it in the shower. It doesn't really matter. The idea is to get incredibly comfortable with you. And you can start by finding things that feel good in your body. Little bits, little pieces, little things. Like, maybe it feels really good if you massage your hand. Maybe it feels really good if you pull on your joints. Maybe it feels really good if you roll your shoulders. Maybe it feels really good if you roll your ankle. Maybe it feels really good if you point your toes or flex your foot, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the point isn't what you're doing. The point is that you're noticing these pleasant sensations that are available for you in your body. And then also, I think over time, it helps you to better understand what negative sensations in your body or uncomfortable sensations in your body mean. Because again, our body is trying so desperately to give us information, important information. If we've never learned how to tune into its frequency, we never learned to tune into what it is trying to tell us, because we weren't taught, we didn't know, we can do it. We can start trying, we can start practicing, can be a little afraid, can do it anyway. If I can do it, you can do it. We really can. Sometimes it just Sometimes it just takes seeing someone else to realize that you're the one that gives you permission. No one else needs to give you any permission. You give yourself permission. Ultimately, that's the truth, you know? Personal authority, that's you telling you what's okay. And if you're scared of that, if you're afraid of that, I think that's normal. I think that's normal because it's not really what it is that we are told. It's not really what we're taught. And especially if we come from like a really religious community or a particularly specific type of culture that teaches us that we should be afraid a lot, you know, there's something wrong with us or that we should be covered up or treated differently or careful or, not too much. But again, what we desire matters a lot more than being desired by others. They're both good, but we pay a lot more attention to one than we pay to the other. And it's like everything, it just takes practice. It just takes practice. We're not going to be good at anything when we're a beginner. We have to be willing to go through being uncomfortable. We have to be willing to go through, flailing around a little bit, or feeling silly, or not knowing what's going to happen. That's okay. That's called being a beginner. It's always a little bit scary to be a beginner. But hey, I'm here. I'm being a beginner. You probably noticed. But just keep doing it. Who knows? I'm going to do 100 episodes of this. So maybe by like the 100th episode, like I'll be a beginner intermediate. That'll feel a little bit easier. No idea. So that's it for me today because I actually just really need to go to the bathroom. So I hope you have a great day.